So you wrote this with David and then also produced it and then starred in it. And that scene where you're being crushed and like basically like eaten apart in battle, did you regret writing that as you were filming it?
Actually, there was one moment where I thought I'm in real trouble here because, you know, my head was filled with the research, and part of the research was that a majority of the deaths at Agincourt occurred by drowning, drowning in the mud. And there was a moment where I was crawling around in the mud. It was about a foot deep, and I couldn't get up, and these guys were tripping on top of me, and I was like, I could actually be in trouble here. And is it really worth it? Is it really worth? Because it's twice now that I had those fear, just a flash of fear that I might die on a movie set, and you think, God, that would be such a shame.
Yeah.
People say, "Oh, you died doing something you love," but I'm like, no. Nobody should die on a movie set.
Wait, what was the other one?
I was in a water tank, and I had a kind of tethered thing around my neck.
Which
a quick
one was
release.
that?
I won't talk about the movie.
Oh.
No, just because I don't want anybody to get feel like they're in trouble, because they're not. But it was an accident. I got twisted around my neck and I couldn't reach the surface. And it was like 2 seconds. I thought, I'm going to drown in here. And then a beautiful scuba diver came forth with it, and he went. And I went, thank God.
Well, that's good. You also did like a ton of other stunts in this one, which I think, that's not the first time you've done stunts like this, but were you like teaching Timmy maybe? Because I think this is the first time he's had to do like a physical role.
Yeah, no, he was great. I mean, look, actors, all the actors I know, well, not all of them, but a majority of them, the moment you give them a chance to do a fight scene it's like you've given them a time machine to go back to when they were a child. And they can kind of create a hybrid of themselves plus the child that always fantasized about that stuff. So actors tend to really dive into, fight scenes. And it's really great watching people kind of go outside their comfort zone too, if it's new to them. And I think that physicality was sort of new to Timmy, but he just those people like Timmy, like a few of the other guys, they tend to just want to keep rehearsing the fight. They want to keep learning new stuff, and it's exciting to watch. I like watching people get on a horse for the first time.
I'm going to ask him about the horse.
Get on that big dog. There's a friend of mine calls horses a motorcycle with a brain.
A motorcycle with a brain?
Yeah, he goes, I'm never getting on a horse. He goes, why would I get on a motorcycle with a brain?
That can like hate you.
Yeah.
Well, you talk about Timmy getting back to like his childhood, which, I mean, that was like, 5 minutes ago? Because he's like ridiculously talented at like 22, which I hate. I don't know if you hate it, but I'm like, that's just so not fair.
I hate it. There's guys and I worked with, obviously worked with him and Lucas Hedges, and it's like amazing watching these kids having just put it all together so quickly at such a young age on a world, with the world watching.
Yeah.
I can't even look at stuff I did when I was that age anymore, because I'd just be like, oh.
You're doing all right. Stop, mister.
I learned slowly. These guys learn quick.
Well, this film, you did a very good job. And I guess you talked about the research of it, because sitting down to write it. Did you talk about the Game of Thrones aspects? Because Henry V, is having this like resurgence because of that show too, because people are realizing like the 100 Years' Wars was based off of it. Did you go into any of that?
No, we weren't really looking at Game of Thrones, but we were more so doing research about the true history of Henry V. It's interesting that there's a couple of shots that are in our battle scene that people are like, that's just like Game of Thrones. It's like, listen, we didn't have a spy in the edit room of Game of Thrones. But yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a lot of people that have an interest in medieval stories or, that period where wars were, people were cut with knives and swords and and there's something about all of those stories that have come since Shakespeare that I think people, look back to Shakespeare. I read so many, in fact, the reason we're even sitting here is because I read a screenplay and I was like, I didn't really like this idea of this sword and horse movie, but God, some of the speeches in it are so derivative of Shakespeare plays that I'd read. And it made me think, what if I actually said to those same studio people, how would you feel if we went off and wrote a version of Henry V? So, Shakespeare is the Holy Grail. We looked at, doing our own thing with it with deference and respect, Now,
Not intimidating at all to be like, Shakespeare, I got this.
Yeah, we got this. But what it allowed us to do was sort of have our own viewpoint on politics, manipulate elements of Shakespeare, mix it with, our own research and bring elements of that in, and then take our own artistic license to kind of shape that into something that we wanted to say. And therefore it helped to not be tethered to a text that was already there.
Well, it's doing quite well. It had the great premiere at Venice, and it's still got great reviews. I think last time I checked, you guys were 77 on the Tomato.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's good. So I will say this, though. You have another film coming up, Bright 2, which is the sequel of Bright.
Yeah.
And that's a film that didn't have the greatest tomato meter, but people love the movie, including people on our website are obsessed with it, which is one of the reasons why we wrote this book called Rotten Movies We Love. The editorial staff of Rotten Tomatoes got people like Leonard Maltin and David Ehrlich and all these really fancy critics, and then people like myself to write about rotten movies that we love. And so I wrote about Harlem Nights and Center Stage and stuff. So what's a rotten movie that you love, that if you could write 500 words about to be like, you guys got this one wrong?
Oh, that's a really good question.
I got one.
I actually, and this is not even just me kind of, going, defending my bro, but it sort of is. He made a movie called Gringo, which I was like, okay, I don't think this is going to sweep the field. It's not going to be like The Irishman and get 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I die to see, by the way. But it almost felt to me like there was something so original in the casting of that movie and the nature of that film, that I was like, really, there's a little bit too much hate sort of slung towards this movie. And I think that maybe there's a tipping point, I think, sometimes where a certain amount of reviewers, I think, jump on a train together. And the thing that makes me upset about reviewing is not whether you get negative or, negative reviews. It's when journalists, it feels to me like they all go, all right, we doing that thing where they're loading the hot take cannon.
We
flex our creative writing muscles, because filmmakers are human beings that have an ego and they put a lot of effort into something. And I think be constructive, be negative, but don't ridicule, because that to me is sort of bullying. And they're very clever reviews and they are fun to read if you want. But at the same time, I just sit there and go, how do you feel if this was written for you? And have you ever gone out and made a movie before? And maybe you should make a movie before you start razor cutting people in the kidneys,
As someone that used to write the reviews, my best thing I always say to it is it takes an extreme amount of effort and everyone doing everything they can to make a bad movie. Yeah. Imagine the miracle that it takes to make a good one.
Exactly.
I need men around me I can trust. I'm here because you're my friend.
King has no friends. King has only followers and foe. But I will come with you.
David, I have to start with you, because when you and Joel sat down, you basically said I can write better than Shakespeare. So talk about having the sort of intestinal fortitude to do that one.
Joel and I wanted to tell a story of Henry V because of his great love for the plays, having performed them on stage when he was a young man. Now he's an old man. But, kind of working out very quickly that we wanted to make them our own, both in terms of form, but also in terms of, what the movie's about. Wanting, unlike the Shakespeare plays, wanting to tell a story of a young king kind of being thrown into a job with great intent, but kind of coming to realize that the job is so much bigger than he is. And so we knew very early on that it wasn't that we thought we could write it better, we knew that we wanted to do it differently.
No, I know. I was just making. He was literally
come on, some slack.
No, and it's great because you guys reinvented things. The Henry V speech is so iconic, and so many people think about it. I think you guys definitely took that Agincourt speech and really did it up, and then you got to scream it for 10 minutes. So I think that's every young actor's dream, right? Is to do Henry V.
No, I was saying that to David before. This is down to the title of the movie. This is the bordering on absurd dream you have when you're a young guy, or young anyone trying to pursue a career in acting is to do this kind of role.
What was that like that day? Like, did you do it like with that throat? Because that seems like a long day of yelling. Like, I don't think I would have been.
Yeah,
able
we
to
did.
survive
We did like 12 or 15 takes or something, and the idea of that is first and foremost that there's a lot of you get to reach the guy in the back of the troops, and it was exhilarating. Yeah, I mean, I had the words down, but I hadn't been like shouting in my hotel room or anything trying to get it right. So there's nothing that could prepare you, nor do you want to jump the gun on what it's going to feel like to be in front of hundreds of guys.
It wasn't even until the day, actually, that I was suddenly grateful for the fact that I had, like, not just an incredibly talented young actor, but an incredibly trained young actor, because it wasn't until the day that I just, take one, hit it, and go, oh man, I need to be careful here that he's not going to... I wouldn't. If I was doing that, I'd be dead. I'd be dead halfway through the first time.
Yeah, you can thank the LaGuardia School of Arts for that one. But back to your casting on this one, you made it a pretty Aussie affair. Like, you got Ben, you got Joel. Actually, I talked to Luke Davies, who wrote Beautiful Boy, before this came out, and he talked about how you guys have like a little Aussie compound.
And Adam Arkapaw, who shot it, is Australian too.
Yeah, where y'all like come together, like you and Joel like chat about like stuff. So tell me about the Aussie compound, and did you recreate it for The King?
Yeah, we had. I mean, not necessarily by design, but a bunch of people that I really love. But I had one of my long-standing producers, Liz Watts, was on it, and Adam Arkapaw, our production designer Fiona Crombie. We did most of the post in Australia as well. There's something that's just nice about forming bonds with people, and working with people again is always fun. I got to do it with Rob Pattinson as well. He's not Australian, but but it's that recurring relationship stuff. Always feels there's a warmth in it. Development of relationships.
Yeah, we got to talk about Rob. For you, Timmy, I wonder what was harder, the stunts, the horseback riding, or not breaking when Rob was doing what Rob was doing?
No, I mean, that's a great, the first two were very challenging. I mean, that to be a New Yorker and then to want to be convincingly authoritative on a horse, but also wielding swords was definitely a big challenge. But no, there was no design to breaking in that scene with Rob, because without spoiling it for anyone, it's so deeply insulting, everything he's saying. So if you're doing your job as an actor, that was a fun scene for me to play out again. I don't want to spoil anything, but I did a movie called Hostiles with Christian Bale, and maybe do I want to say all this? I don't know, but like
there's some similar beats in it.
I don't know. Yeah, that was the scene where, because I closely watched how he worked when I worked with him on that movie, and that scene is the one that I can kind of point to that he'd do better than I would, that he would have kicked ass, and and it has everything to do with an interior life and not to do with my mind was far from how insane what Rob was doing was.
It must have been fun because basically Rob's job was just to be a jerk, like a super 15th century French jerk. I mean, that's got to be a fun thing for...
Did you take offense as a Frenchman, like by blood, and be like,
no, because he could have taken offense as an Englishman. So
hey, that's true. Y'all, did you do that on purpose just to mess with them? Like cast the French kid as the English? No, I'm just kidding. No.
Just picking names I don't have.
Yeah, no, I'm kidding.
Different flags.
I gotta ask this because we work for Rotten Tomatoes, and everybody in the comment section would lose it if I didn't ask a little bit about Dune. And Denny, can you say anything about
yes.
it?
No. no, I'm kidding. No, but I can't wait to see it, and that was the craziest shoot of my life. After this was crazy in a totally different way, in a medieval way, and that was crazy in a wow, look at all these things they built way.
Right on. Well, they're wrapping me, but I have one quick thing. So you guys are fresh. I think it's like 77 when I checked this morning, so good job. But there's this book that we wrote at Rotten Tomatoes called Rotten Movies We Love, where we actually got people like Leonard Maltin and all these really famous critics to write about rotten movies.
Oh,
and
dangerous question comment.
The critics got it wrong. What's a movie you love that you would want to write about?
77's where you want to be, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're at 100, that means that you've just made something that I guess everyone finds inoffensive. You want to be in that kind of in the 70s.
Really, the art, you got to have like a little bit of dip. But do you have a rotten movie that you love, like Step Brothers or like...
Was Step Brothers rotten?
Yes. Can you believe it? Or like a movie
Is Dodgeball rotten?
Yeah.
Are any of mine rotten?
I
Because then they were deeply misunderstood.
Do you feel a sense of achievement
In what regard?
in any regard?
First of all, I have to say, what do they say? It's okay if you only get 1 minute at bat as long as you hit a home run. So you weren't in the movie that long, but girl,
Thank you.
sold it in that scene.
Well, that is so kind. Thank you so much.
No, it's really good. But is that hard knowing that literally your whole part, because you obviously know from the script, it's this is it. I got to get it right here. Does that make it more intimidating?
Right. I mean, I think it definitely can be a little bit intimidating. But I honestly think that you could either take it as intimidation and just die over how nervous you are or something, or just be I'm gonna let this feed my character and feed my urgency and my desire to kind of do her justice as much as I could and do do the best that I could. I think it's always also it's intimidating going into something for just a few days or something and being I have to nail it right now. But I mean, luckily I was really well surrounded. I mean, David is so incredible to work with, and we had so many great discussions about Catherine and about what she means to him and how he wanted her to be represented in the movie and everything. And also intimidating to play a real life character, wanting to do her justice and everything. And she's such a fascinating character, just who she was and everything. But yeah, it was just an honor, honestly, above all. I was so honored to, that they wanted me to be a part of this project, and to be able to play somebody like Catherine was just really exciting.
Yeah, it's so interesting too, because in it, there's that one scene where you and Timmy are speaking French, and I know Timmy's French and you're French, but he's very awkward about his French sometimes, speaking it in front of other people. Was he in any way nervous about it, making sure he got the pronunciation right?
Well, that's an interesting part of the scene, actually, is that he speaks French to her for a second. He says a few words to her, and then he's well, we can't speak French anymore. We have to speak English. And that's him kind of trying to take control of the situation, of their first real one-on-one meeting. And then she's kind of well, I can't speak English. She kind of flips it on its head, which obviously I think she can speak English. She just doesn't want to. That's her being you're not going to just have me just like that. I think that's a really interesting part of the.
Yeah, their dynamic is like tennis. She never gives him an inch, which is really interesting.
Yeah. I think she's observing him with a curiosity, and trying to be figure out who this person is, who she's supposed to marry and make a life with, when all she knows of him is his actions, his leadership as a king and his battles and everything like that, and the war that he's waging against France and everything. I think that she's really trying to figure out, I know his actions, who is this man?
Yeah, it's really interesting too, because the king, or Henry the Fifth, is such an iconic, obviously because of the Shakespeare, but it's also having a revamp because it was the basis for Game of Thrones, and nerds are oh, this is the war, and so Henry is Robb Stark, that's Henry the Fourth, and your character is an amalgamation of his wife and then somebody else that could die. Is there any other royal person from history that you would want to either make a fictionalized version of or play a real life version?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, I've always loved Marie Antoinette, and I love the Sofia Coppola movie. I think it's so amazing, but I think it would be really interesting to see a story about Marie Antoinette after she's captured and everything. I think that, there's all those letters that she wrote and everything.
Oh, write that screenplay. Hey, can we make this happen? That sounds amazing. I love that.
That would be a really interesting story to see. But no, I think that, when we're talking about taking creative licenses and creative freedom on history and kind of retelling, I think that's what's so interesting about this story, is that it's not history exactly as it was, and it's not exactly Shakespeare either. It's really David and Joel, who wrote the script together, taking kind of pieces from both of those and really putting it through their own lens. And they give Catherine a voice that was not often afforded to women at that time period. And that's what I love so much about reading the script for the first time, is I was wow, I've never seen a woman in this time period speak like that, and speak with such strength and calmness and assuredness. I think it was really beautiful to see, and it's really, nice to see her counsel to Hal at the end of the movie compared to all the counsel that he gets from the men that surround him throughout the movie.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the two smartest people in the room are the two women, both the woman that's next to Falstaff and then of course yourself next to Henry, and all of that.
And his sister as well.
Yeah,
I think it's definitely not a coincidence that the three women that we see often in the movie, or that we see in the movie, though they're not there all of the time, when they do appear, they are these kind of calm voices of reason. I think that's, you know, definitely something that David and Joel wanted, and that David, you know, definitely implicated in the you know, the shooting and everything. But yeah, I think that, you know, when you compare their advice to Hal with like the men around him, you know, their intentions are entirely pure, and I don't think that can be said for, you know, all the men in the movie.
That's very true. This is going to be like a complete change, but we just recently had Kevin in studio where we did an oral history of Clerks and the VUSQ universe, basically.
Cool.
And of course, he talked about Moose Knuckles, which
Moose Jaws.
Sorry, I said Moose Knuckles. He talked about Moose Jaws, and he mentioned you at it. Can you tell us anything? Because he's beyond excited about it. I can tell you that much.
I don't know anything about it. I wish I could tell you something. I don't know anything. Yeah, tell him to call me and let me know.
Tell him to call you. I mean, he's like, he mentioned it's like, you know, this is like you guys teaming up again with you and Harley. He said that was like one of his favorite shoots to ever do, was because you guys were very funny to direct.
It was so much fun. I mean, it was the best first movie that I could have ever asked for. I mean, you know, Harley's been one of my best friends since I was 5, known Kevin and their whole family for forever, and so that was the best shoot ever. And also, like, you know, we weren't exactly our characters, but we were like pretty similar to our characters at that time. We were like 15 and everything, and so that was the best time. I would love to work with him again.
That's awesome. And then the very last one, as a person born and raised in France, what was your first reaction to Robert Pattinson on screen when you saw him at Venice?
I thought he was great. I was so excited to see his part, because obviously he plays my brother, but we don't have any scenes together. So I was like so excited to see what he was gonna do with it and everything, and I thought he was incredible. I loved what he did with it. You know, I think he's so, you know, frustrated. Like he's just really, he's pushing all of the King's buttons, I think, in the perfect way, and it's exactly what we needed that time in the movie. I thought he was great. Loved his part.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, like if you're gonna do a broad, like very broad French performance, just own it in every way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
did,
no, I
which is
loved
great.
him. I thought he did a great job.